She had been walking for 2 days through the rising storm when her wagon's weak wheel finally snapped beneath the weight of the crates she carried. Rain hammered like stones against the canvas roof as cold wind curled around her legs, stealing the warmth from her bones. She couldn't see the moon anymore, only dark shapes twisting in the sky. Alone, exhausted, and soaked through, she curled beside the broken wheel, clutching her coat tighter. She whispered a shaky prayer that morning would come before the storm erased her completely. When thunder cracked overhead so fiercely the ground trembled, she pressed her forehead to her knees and fought the urge to cry. She had crossed territories before, but never alone, never with her heart this hollow. Every mile reminded her of what she had lost. The home burned in a raid, the family scattered, and the life she once believed would unfold gently. Now she had nothing but the wagon, a few supplies, and the strength she managed to rebuild piece by fragile piece. Tonight even that strength felt thin. The storm worsened until the wind sounded like a beast clawing at the earth. She tried to rest, but each rumble jolted her awake. Her eyes stung, her muscles shook, and her breath turned shallow as the temperature dropped. She knew she needed shelter, real shelter, not the side of a wheel in an open plain. But her boots were soaked, the ground was mud, and she feared wandering blindly in the storm would only end worse. Still, she pushed herself to stand, determined not to freeze in the dark. Lightning flashed, and for a heartbeat she saw a figure on horseback cresting a ridge not far from her wagon. Her breath caught. She couldn't tell if it was danger or salvation. The rider slowed, lantern swinging from the saddle, its golden glow cutting through the rain like a promise. She hesitated, but her body could no longer move out of fear. She stayed still as the horse approached, hooves splashing in the mud. The rider dismounted, tall and broad-shouldered, his duster soaked through but his stance steady. "You shouldn't be out here," he called over the wind, voice deep but gentle. His lantern illuminated a rugged face marked by hardship yet softened by something warmer. "Storm like this'll swallow you whole." She tried to answer, but her shivering turned her words to fragments. He stepped closer, offering a hand and shielding her from the storm with his coat. "My ranch is close. Come with me. You'll freeze if you stay out here." She sensed no threat, only concern, and nodded, trusting him. He lifted her onto his horse with surprising care, settling her before mounting behind her. His arms, strong and steady, wrapped around her only to keep her from falling as the storm battered them. She felt safe for the first time in days. The horse pressed forward through mud and driving rain, guided by a man who seemed as immovable as the mountains themselves. She leaned against him, unable to stop the tears that came, the quiet kind of crying born from relief rather than fear. By the time they reached his ranch, she was barely awake. He carried her inside a warm cabin lit by a fire that crackled like it had been waiting for her. He placed blankets over her shoulders, set a kettle on the stove, and spoke softly as though afraid any louder tone might break her. "Name's Elias," he said. "Got a little girl upstairs sleeping through this storm. You're safe here." She nodded again, still trembling, but the warmth seeped into her slowly, easing the ache in her chest. When she finally managed to speak, her voice came out fragile. "I didn't mean to trouble anyone. My wheel broke. I thought I could wait out the storm." Elias shook his head with a patient smile. "You're not trouble. Folks need each other out here more than they admit." His kindness surprised her. Most strangers she'd met on the trail held their words like weapons. But Elias spoke as if offering a blanket, a steady invitation to breathe again. He brewed tea and handed it to her, steam curling around her chilled fingers. The scent of herbs reminded her faintly of home, a memory that squeezed her heart until her eyes stung again. Elias noticed but didn't cry. Instead, he stirred the fire, giving her space to gather herself. In that quiet, she realized how lonely she had become. Not just alone, but starved for a voice that wasn't harsh, a place that wasn't cold, a moment where she didn't have to pretend to be stronger than she felt. When thunder rumbled again, she flinched. Elias looked at her for a long moment, then spoke with a certainty that startled her. "You'll never sleep out in a storm again, not while I'm around." The promise made something inside her loosen, a thread of fear snapping softly. The storm outside still raged, but inside the cabin warmth wrapped around her like a second skin. She hadn't heard words like that in years, words that sounded like someone choosing her safety as if it mattered. As he turned away to check the door locks, she studied him, how carefully he moved, how calmly he spoke. His kindness wasn't a performance, it radiated from him like heat from the fire. She wondered what weight he carried behind those gentle eyes. A single father, he'd said. A man who'd likely known his share of storms too. The thought drew an unexpected ache from her chest, the kind that wasn't quite sadness anymore but something warmer, almost hopeful. Hours passed, and the storm began to soften. Elias offered her his room, insisting he'd sleep by the fire. She refused at first, not wanting to displace him, but he laughed softly. "I've slept on that couch more times than I can count. It's practically a second bed." She finally accepted, and as she lay under clean blankets, warmth surrounding her, she realized she wasn't afraid for the first time since leaving her old life behind. Morning light broke through the curtains in gentle gold, and for a moment she couldn't remember where she was. Then she heard soft footsteps and a small voice whisper, "Papa, is she awake?" A little girl peeked around the doorframe, hair tangled from sleep, eyes wide with curiosity. Elias stepped in behind her. "This is Lily," he said. "She doesn't talk to strangers much." Lily surprised them both by walking straight to the bed and placing her tiny hand on the woman's arm. Lily's quiet trust melted something inside her. She smiled, greeting the girl softly. The child leaned closer, studying her face with disarming earnestness. Elias watched with a hint of wonder, as if Lily's acceptance meant more than he could say. "Looks like you've made a friend," he murmured. The warmth in his voice, mixed with the morning light, made the cabin feel like a place she had known long before stepping into it. Gentle, steady, real. After breakfast, Elias helped her examine the wagon behind the barn. The wheel was beyond repair, cracked straight through. She felt panic rise. Without the wagon, she couldn't continue her journey. But Elias rested a calming hand on her shoulder. "I've got spare wheels in the shed. We'll fix it." His confidence steadied her. Together they worked in the sunlight, Lily handing them tools with solemn determination. For the first time in months, she laughed, not out of politeness but genuine joy. As the day passed, she learned small things about him. How he'd lost his wife years ago, how he raised Lily alone while managing the ranch, how storms always made him uneasy because they reminded him of the night everything changed. He didn't share the details, but she didn't need them. The pain behind his words was enough. She shared pieces of her past in return, not everything, but enough for him to understand she had known loss too. Their shared sadness wove something unspoken between them. In the evening, Elias prepared dinner, simple stew, warm bread, and herbs from the garden. She hadn't eaten a meal with others in so long that the moment felt almost ceremonial. Lily sat beside her, swinging her legs under the table, occasionally leaning against her as if claiming her presence. Elias watched the two of them, his eyes softer than before. When she thanked him for everything he had done, he shook his head gently. "Some people aren't meant to be alone. You shouldn't have been out there." Later, as they cleaned the dishes, a soft quiet settled over them. She felt a strange ache. She had come here by accident, yet the thought of leaving tightened her chest. Elias noticed the shift in her expression. "If you want to stay a day or two until you're ready," he said, "you're welcome to." His voice held no pressure, only warmth. Lily, hearing this, wrapped her arms around the woman's leg as if casting her vote. She laughed, touched by the child's affection. The next morning, the repaired wagon stood ready, but she lingered by the porch, unsure. Elias stepped beside her, hands in his pockets, gaze fixed on the horizon. "If you're leaving," he said quietly, "I won't stop you. But I want you to know," he hesitated, choosing his words with care. "You don't have to keep facing storms alone. Not anymore." His sincerity washed through her like another kind of warmth, deeper than firelight, steadier than sunlight. She looked at Lily, who waited by the door clutching a small wooden flower she had carved from soft pine. The child offered it shyly. "For you," she whispered. Something inside her shifted. She had lost so much, wandered so far, yet here she was, being offered a place, a family, a new beginning. The wagon no longer felt like her only anchor. Instead, it felt like a reminder of how long she had been drifting without realizing she wanted to stop. "I don't know what tomorrow looks like," she admitted, turning toward Elias. "But I know I don't want to spend it alone." Elias stepped closer, a gentle, steady smile lifting his features. "Then stay," he murmured, voice rich with hope. "Stay as long as you want." She felt every piece of fear inside her settle, replaced by something tender and brave. She nodded, and he exhaled as if releasing a burden he had carried for years. Lily cheered softly, wrapping her small arms around the woman's waist. The embrace felt like a promise of mornings filled with warmth rather than wandering, dinners filled with laughter instead of silence, and storms faced together rather than alone. She knelt to hug Lily properly, feeling tears rise but not from sorrow this time. They came from the relief of finally belonging somewhere again. As days turned into weeks, she found her rhythm in the ranch, feeding animals, helping with chores, reading stories to Lily by lamplight. Elias often watched them from the porch, a quiet smile touching his lips, as if seeing them together healed something in him. Sometimes their hands brushed, lingering longer than necessary. Each small moment wove them together more tightly until it felt natural to share the same spaces, the same meals, the same gentle silences. One evening, as the sky blushed pink behind the hills, Elias walked beside her near the pasture. A soft breeze carried the scent of hay and spring blossoms. Lily played nearby, chasing a butterfly with carefree laughter. Elias stopped, turning toward her with a look she had come to recognize, a mix of gratitude and longing. "You walking into that storm," he said quietly, "felt like life giving me a chance I never expected." She felt her breath catch, not from fear but from understanding. "You saved me," she murmured. "But I think we saved each other." Elias stepped closer, touching her hand lightly. He held it as though it were something precious, something he never wanted to risk losing. The simple gesture carried more meaning than any grand declaration could. She squeezed his hand back, letting him know she felt the same. When the next storm rolled across the plains, thunder echoing in the distance, she stood by the porch watching the dark clouds gather. Elias slipped an arm around her waist, pulling her gently against him. Lily joined them, clutching both their hands. The storm no longer frightened her. Instead, it reminded her of the night everything changed. The night she found a home she never expected. As rain began to fall, Elias pressed a soft kiss to her temple and whispered the words he had spoken the first night, but now they carried new meaning, deeper and permanent. "You'll never sleep alone again." She leaned into him, heart steady, breath warm, knowing he meant it with every part of his soul. Together they stepped inside the cabin, shutting out the cold and embracing the life they had built, three hearts woven into one. And for the first time in a long, uncertain journey, she knew with absolute certainty that the storms ahead would never break her. Not when she had a place, a family, and a man who had turned a moment of chance into a lifetime of belonging.